In this video, we are going to be taking a look at something a little bit special, and that is the new DJI Cendence remote controller for the Inspire 2 and Matrice 200 series. Now, I should say before getting started, DJI have very kindly sent this over for me to have a play with. This is a pre-release model, so there could be some changes before it reaches final production, but we're quite late in the day now, so I wouldn't expect to see too many things change. But I should just stress that although we have it here, the software and things will only get better and get improved from here. So in this video, what I want to do is take a close look at the remote controller, explain some of its features. It's going to be quite a long one. Let's get started. Well, it's an upgraded remote controller for the Inspire 2 and Matrice 200 series. To understand it fully, you really have to go back to the beginning and look at the original remote controller. The original remote, which is this one here, really starts back with the Inspire 1 series. The design hasn't changed a huge amount since the Inspire 1 days. It's a really good, functional, solid remote controller with basic functionality. So what DJI did was put a power button, a return to home button and landing gear switch. You then had your pause stroke shutter buttons. You then had your camera settings adjustment, and then on the other corner you then had just your single gimbal control, which you could change between pitch and yaw. You had your mode switch and your record button, and that was it. All of the other features were designed to be used on the Go app, so everything else you wanted to do you had to use on your touch screen and touch your device and change the options on the screen. The problem with this was it meant taking your fingers off the controls. So as time has gone on, a lot more features have been added to the products, and what this is a fully featured remote control for pro users. So it allows you to set programmable buttons, put features on specific buttons and sliders and controls to allow you to do some of those great shots without actually taking your hands off the sticks, and that's the real big benefit of it. Okay, let's take a closer look at the controller itself. So, as you will see, there are a number of large differences. The first being that it has an LCD screen on the bottom down here. The second is you can see I've got it fitted up with the DJI Crystal Sky monitor. Now, it comes with the Crystal Sky quick release bracket as standard, although you can still use it with a device holder like on the old remote, but it is an optional accessory. It does not come as standard. Looking over the remote, you can see a whole host of new buttons, options and features. So you have a host of programmable ones, you have some new knobs, you have a couple of menu buttons, some rotary controllers as well, and depending on the function we'll come on to that and we'll have a look at what they do. Now, there's a few things about the controller itself. The big benefits before we get started is actually around the back, and that is this here. That is the external battery pack. So Cendence uses the same battery, which is this one here, that the Crystal Sky monitor uses. So it means you no longer have to worry when you're flying about keep topping up the remote controller. You can now swap the battery out and have spare batteries with you. This is a huge thing for pro users. It really is. Having the ability to be able to fly whilst charging another battery or have multiple batteries with you means you no longer have to worry about the charge level on the remote controller itself. The second big feature which pro users are going to love is the integrated focus control, and that is this little potentiometer here. They've included as standard a endless potentiometer, so it's clickless and endless, and it's mapped to the focus. So for X5S users, it will allow fine control of the focus without having to use the external DJI focus options as well. Let's take a closer look at the remote controller and have a look at some of the buttons. To do this, the first thing I'm going to do is remove the Crystal Sky monitor. Now this gives me a chance to actually demonstrate the bracket. To remove it, we just flick the lever out, lift it off like that, and that then reveals the USB-C port, which is mounted on there, and then the bracket which mounts onto the bottom of Crystal Sky like that, that stays fixed. To mount the monitor back on, you simply click it in place, tighten the lever, and that then is the Crystal Sky firmly in place. You'll notice that there are no cables when using Crystal Sky. All of the data and information is sent through the USB-C port into the controller directly. There are no cables around the back of it or anything. It's a completely integrated solution, so it's very, very tidy. So we will remove the Crystal Sky and take a close look at the buttons. Okay, looking at the controller up close, you will see we have a whole host of buttons. We have 2 programmable buttons up on the top left hand corner. There are another 2 of these on the top right hand corner too. They're labelled BA, BB, BC and BD. You then have down the side here camera function buttons, which are labelled CM, CS, CA and CE currently, and they are preset to camera functions. So you've got appenditure, ISO, shutter and exposure. So you've got pre-programmed buttons. Currently these can't be changed, they are preset by DJI. You then further along have the pause button, just located there, the power button, and that works just like all of the other power buttons on the DJI products in the sense of you press it once, which gives you the battery level, but this time it brings it up on the screen, and you press it twice to turn it on. Moving over further along, we have the focus control, which I discussed earlier. Again, looking up close, this is a rotary potentiometer which never ends, so it just keeps going. It's really quite nice and stiff actually, so it won't move by accident. It's clickless and it will allow really nice, fine and precise control of the focus. Moving over, you've got your return to home option. Again, just like on all of the other DJI aircraft, you've then got a dedicated menu button which brings up the menu within DJI Go, and I'll demonstrate that a little bit later. You've got another 2 then programmable buttons down the bottom side here. And then in the right side you have a rotary encoder which just rotates for changing the camera settings, and it's got a selection in it as well. The way it currently works is to change, say, ISO, you would press and hold that button and rotate the knob, and that will change the setting for you. We've then got the lanyard strap in the centre, and then at the top here we then have the Crystal Sky bracket. If I tip it in there, you can see the USB-C port, and again there's no cables and nothing like this, it's just the single USB-C port. A thing to note when using it with Crystal Sky actually is that when you are, it does not power the monitor. When using with Crystal Sky, it only uses the internal battery on Crystal Sky. The controller itself will not power the monitor. However, if you are using it with an iOS device or an Android device on the back USB port, it will provide some power for that. It really will. And that'll do 1 amp in iOS and 1.5 amp in Android. Taking a look at the sticks. As usual with the DJI controllers, actually the sticks are really nice, really responsive. They're topped off with this really nice machined aluminium caps, and they're not too sharp. I've used some remotes where they're really, really sharp, but these ones are really quite comfortable. I'm a stick person with my thumbs on the top, so I'm not that. I don't find that comfortable. I'm that, if I'm honest. As much as I try to do that, it just doesn't work for me. But the gimbals themselves are really nice, really responsive and positive. They are traditional gimbals as well. They are using potentiometers. They are not using Hall effect sensors like on the Mavic. Okay, looking round to the side of the controller, on the right hand side we have some fixed feature buttons, which is camera record, which is that one there, shutter, which to take a still at the top, and an autofocus button. Now these are preset, you can't reprogram these are set by DJI. On the left hand side you then have a BG and a BH button. Those 2 are programmable, so you can set them to the features within the Go app. You then have the mode switch, which is vertical on this controller. So instead of it being horizontal, you've got attitude at the bottom, sport mode in the center, and PGPS mode above it. Another thing you will notice, on each corner you have gimbal control wheels. So unlike the original Inspire remote where you could only control the gimbal with one corner adjuster and you had to change it between the 2 settings to do pitch and yaw, each one is mapped already. So this side, the left wheel is mapped to pitch, and the right wheel is matched to gimbal yaw. So what it means is you are able to do some proper camera moves, especially for camera operators, at the same time without having to do one then switch over to the other. So for the single operator guys, this is a real big thing. It really is. And again, those two are pre-mapped by DJI. They cannot be changed. Moving round to the side, on each side of the RC is a rotary slider. There is one on the left and one on the right. And again, these will be able to be mapped to specific features within the Go app. Looking at the back, you still have the two C triggers, so C1 and C2. What you do also have now is new C buttons hiding up here. So you've got C4 and C3. So these triggers are there to allow you to have some extra programmable features. And again, just like the original C buttons, these two new ones here are programmable as well. The only other things on the remote that is on the back then is the unlock button for the battery. So that is a button, but obviously it's not programmable. That is purely a release button. And then on the other corner, you still have a charge port for the battery. So although the battery is removable, you can put the battery onto charge whilst it's connected to the controller, or you can charge it externally. Looking at the battery itself, removal is nice and simple. All you do is press the unlock button, slide it to the side, and there are two springs underneath that push it up, and it lifts out just like that. That simple, really. It really is that easy to get out. Now, it's the same battery that is used on the Crystal Sky monitor. So that's the same 4,920 milliamp hour battery, 2S. Identical pack. And again, the good thing is you can either charge it externally or you can charge it within the remote controller itself. To click it back in, it is just as simple as that. I should say on the back of this remote there is a rubber cover missing. On the test models that has been the case for most of the guys who've had them. When you get this brand new, you will get it with a rubber cover over there. What is interesting though is because it is missing, it allows us to see there are controls for adjusting the gimbal tensions hidden beneath. So we wouldn't have known that had that not been missing. Finally, the real big party pieces on this remote control, and that's on the back, and there's actually a few of them. SDI output for the broadcast guys. So you've got a direct SDI output, which is obviously a BNC connector, which is really handy to have. You've got your micro USB port, that'll be for updating software. You've got a CAN bus port for external accessories. We have HDMI. And we have USB. Now this USB port here is used if you are using an external tablet. So while you cannot use Crystal Sky and a tablet at the same time, you can remove the Crystal Sky bracket, put the tablet holder on there and use your iPad, and you would use it via that port there. And as I was saying earlier, that port will also charge your iOS or Android device. It'll provide 1 amp for iOS and up to 1.5 amp for Android, depending on what your phone supports. Another interesting thing on this remote controller is the antennas. You have the usual stick antennas, which DJI have had on their RCs for many years. However, for the first time, these are removable. So if we flip them out straight and undo that bolt and release, the antenna comes off. The reason for this is DJI are making a range of external antenna accessories for the remote controller. Now, one of them is the track antenna, which is a large external one, which DJI are going to be doing, but they have also put out a patch antenna for it as well, and I do have that to play with. However, I'm not going to show that on video quite yet. That's something to look at in the future. Looking at the connections on the antenna, you have just the standard type connector which you'd expect to see on any antenna with the center pin and the earthed output. And to fit them back on, you would just pop it back in nice and gently and screw it up nice and tight, and then you have the full range of movement just like before. It hits a limit there, or we can flip it round and it hits a limit there, so you can fold them, put them out straight, just like you would expect on any other usual remote controller. Moving around it then, you've just got your vents along here. Now behind these vents, I don't know if you can quite see this on camera, but the 5.8 gigahertz and flat antennas are located behind this grill. So you've got two square patch antennas, one each side, which is hiding behind the grill for 5.8. Because obviously the Inspire 2 supports both 2.4 gigahertz and 5.8 gigahertz control frequency. That isn't like you get on the standard model of the Phantom 3, for instance. On this, all video, audio, control signal is all sent over the one frequency, so it is either 2.4 or 5.8. So the antennas for that are located underneath that front panel there. Then moving around to the bottom, you have the ear vents, and again that is for cooling. This this remote controller does get quite hot in use. Not overly hot, hot probably isn't the right term. It gets very warm in use, as you would expect, and there are vents down there. Last thing really to show is you've got screw bosses in the base and on the back on each corner here for fitting to an external support. So something like neck straps, neck holders, things like that. You've got the external ones there. Obviously you've got your normal lanyard port at the front there. Okay, let's go and turn it on. It's just like all the other DJI RCs, so it's press and release once, then press and hold the power button. When it comes on, the display comes up with DJI, and one of the party pieces of it is that if you're using it with Crystal Sky, it will turn the Crystal Sky monitor on for you. So, as I said, it will not power the monitor, it will not supply power to Crystal Sky or charge it. However, what it will do is turn it on and put you into the Go app, ready to go. Now, as you can see, if we look closely, you can see a host of information on the main display. Now, there is two different displays depending on which mode you have it set up in. If you are in Master, you get this display, which shows battery level for the remote controller, battery level for the aircraft, signal level and satellite count. You then get the Master or Slave option, so Master or Assistant. Then you get distance from the home point, height, horizontal speed and vertical speed, and then the bar along the bottom shows some status when the aircraft is flying. So that's the main screen you get when it is turned on. If you are in assistant mode, so you are using the controller as a slave, you actually get this other screen, which shows you camera specific information for the operator rather than the pilot. So there are two screens. Now you can't swap between these two screens. At the moment it is preset that in the Master you get the one screen and in the Slave you get the other. Now the info on this screen is currently purely informational. Just like the Mavic, you can't change nothing that's on there. It is purely just information to aid you. So let's take a close look at the options that are available to you with the remote controller. As I showed you earlier, there is a dedicated menu button. So when I press this, this will bring up the menu that allows you to change the settings. Now there are two screens. You've got front and back. So the back shows you the programmable buttons for the back screen, and the front shows you the programmable buttons for the front screen. You then have at the top the option to label the remote controller and actually set up multiple users. So you can set up individual user accounts for the remote controller. You can then export them and save them externally. So once you've set up your configuration, you could actually save that and transfer it to another remote controller if you wanted to. There are also 3 separate configuration options per each user. So you've got configuration 1, configuration 2 and configuration 3. So I switch over to that. So each individual user can have a number of different configurations depending on what they want to use the aircraft for. So if they're in single op mode or dual op mode. So the pilot remote, for instance, could have one set of buttons when he's flying on his own and another set of buttons when he's flying with the camera operator. To show what buttons can be controlled, you can see the ones that are highlighted are programmable. So you can see down here, like that is the power button, which is fixed, the ISO, the APR, shutter and EV, the pause and exit. All of those are grayed out because they are not changeable. However, the focus knob, you can see it allows us to change that. Now currently there is only one option for that in the software. None of the other options currently work. So it's purely just mapped to the focus control. Up on the corner here you can see I've got the bottom of the two buttons, one programmed to live view expand. So if I click it, it brings up the list of options which you can set it to. So if I scroll to the top, you've got undefined, which means it's not in use. You've then got camera settings, which shows camera, center metering, A-lock, playback, center autofocus, AFMF, peak focus, histogram, white balance, overexposure. If I go down to gimbal, you've then got get gimbal control for dual ops, camera yaw recenter, gimbal follow and spotlight, FPV camera recenter. Under flight control, you've got turn on and off the LEDs, so you can turn off the ones on the front of the aircraft, turn on and off quick spin, update home point to the aircraft's current location, update the home point to the condenser's location. So if you're using Crystal Sky that has built-in GPS, it will update it to there. Turn on and off radar chart, landing gear up and down, because there is no dedicated landing gear button. So you have to set one of the buttons to the landing gear if you're using the Inspire 2, and then you've got the landing gear switch. Under app, you've got switch map and live view. That is really one of my favorite functions. I'll show that in a minute. Clear flight route, battery info, closed tips, another great one. So the wind warnings that come up in the corner, that's telling you it's too windy to fly, or it's telling you to be careful while it's windy. You can now close that with the touch of a button. Check warnings, turn on grid lines and enter full screen mode. Under advanced, you've got composition mode, turn on and off downward visual sensors, so turn off VPS, turn on and off forward obstacle sensors. And currently under other, you have live view expand, which is for the FPV camera, and the switch between 2.4 and 5.8 control frequencies. That is the settings that are available at the moment. However, again, I should stress these are test release units and this is still early software. To demonstrate some of the features, if I come out, I've already got my buttons mapped out. So up on the corner here, I've got this mapped to switch in between the FPV feed and the main camera feed. On the other one, I've got it set to switch between full screen map and back to the FPV feed. This button here, I've got it set between manual and autofocus. So I can then set it to manual focus and adjust the focus via the control knob there. I've got exposure metering back to center set on that one there. So it allows me to reset the exposure metering. So I can touch it to the screen manually up there, or say set it down there. And then I can tap that button and it will drop it back to the center. Over this side, I've got it set to show the battery levels. I've got the gimbal yaw reset on that controller over there. So if I spin him back around, nice shot, some plugs. But I've got that set back to center. And then I've got a couple of other features set on the other side. The other buttons to demonstrate is the camera control buttons. So to do this, I'm going to go into manual. So as you can see, I've dropped into manual camera mode now. So to adjust the camera settings, what you would do is press and hold CE, and then that will begin to adjust the ISO levels. So as you can see, I'm pressing and holding, and the ISO levels are changing there. If I then press and hold A, it starts adjusting the F points. CS, which is the shutter, so it allows me to adjust the shutter settings, and then EV with the top one when you would be in auto modes. So if I go back to auto, I can then adjust EV on that one there, giving you your quick adjustment by pressing and holding that. The menu button, which I showed you earlier, again, is just that one there, which you press, and that brings up the configuration screen. The main menu for the remote controller is exactly the same as before, so there's nothing unusual about that. And the option to get into that Crystal Sky menu is also in here as well. So if I scroll down to the remote controller, this is the same menu as you had before. You've just got Condense Custom Settings, which takes us back into that screen there, and we can also just press the menu button to get out of it. The other thing I was talking about earlier, and the big one for single camera ops, is the camera gimbal controls on each corner. So it allows you to control the camera gimbal and mix the controls and have full individual yaw and pan on the corner of the gimbals. Just like on the normal controls, you've got full ramping up options on these, so you can individually adjust the ramping options for the gimbal. So if I go down into the gimbal settings, gimbal advanced settings, and you've then got the max gimbal pitch speed, the start stop buffer, and the pitch expo. And then you've got the gimbal yaw speed, the pan smoothness and track, and yaw expo as well. So you've still got those settings to be able to tune it individually. But for single ops, these two alone are really, really big features. And as you can see, they're allowing us to adjust the camera and do it that way. Okay, so to finish up on this, a couple of other things as I've got written on my notepad. Weight, which is something quite important to talk about. The weight of the remote controller on its own is just over 1 kilo. It's about 1,041 grams. Comparing it to the standard remote, okay, if you were to use the standard remote control with an iPad Mini 2, those two will come in at about 1,350 grams. Cendence fitted with the 7.85 Crystal Sky comes in 400 grams more at 1,754 grams roughly, and if you use it with the 5.5 inch Crystal Sky, it's 1,500 grams, so it's less than 200 grams more than, about 150 grams more than using that. But even so, when using with the Crystal Sky with the 7.85, it's still only 400 grams more than using the standard remote controller. And for that 400 grams, you're getting interchangeable battery, quick release connection, all of the functionality on the remote controller. So you will be able to use it with an neck strap, in my opinion, a very good one. I wouldn't use a cheap one by any means, but use a good high quality neck strap, and this is the one to go for new. So to summarize, I've been using it for about 4 or 5 days now, and I love it. I absolutely love it to pieces. It is as simple as that. It is night and day difference between using this and using this. Just having the option to have the little features at your fingertips is massive. I can't stress enough how much of a difference it is to be able to switch between the FPV camera just at the touch of the button like that, or to be able to bring the map view up or reset the home point. All of these features. Now, as time goes on, I hope DJI are going to add a lot more features. It would be nice to be able to map almost every function in the Go app. There's no reason we couldn't have that. Some people have asked me, are there things like presets for preset camera positions and things like that? There isn't that there as it stands today. However, there is nothing to say that won't come in the future either. However, as it stands today, I love it. It is as simple as that. It is absolutely fantastic. It's just those little things in flight, being able to do those little changes without messing about with the app screen makes a big difference. As for using it with a phone, tablet or Crystal Sky, when coupled with the 7.85 Crystal Sky, it is a lovely setup. The monitor is just so bright in outdoor conditions, and when used with the remote controller, it's a really, really cracking setup. It really is. I think I've covered everything in this video. My original intention was to do it outside, but we have had 5 days of rain here continuously. I'm gonna do an extension to this video in about a week or so, showing this in real world usage, because everybody always complains at me, you're sitting in your living room or whatever showing it, it doesn't show you it in real world usage. What I wanted to do in this video was show you the features, the options, and how it is. In the next video, I'll try and show it to you out in real world usage. Thank you very, very much for watching if you've got to this far in the video, because it is going to be a very long one, and I will do another video again soon.